Hi and welcome. I'm Mich Bondesio, and this is Creating Cadence, a podcast about what it really takes to work well and live well in this fast-paced world we live in. I'm the author of The Cadence Effect, and aside from this podcast, I also write regularly over on Substack. The focus of my work is on reimagining work and business for high-performing founders and teams, creatively minded entrepreneurs, and purpose-driven business owners who want to make a meaningful impact without sacrificing themselves or their people to burnout, hustle, and overwork. This is episode 92, the second of season 15. This season follows a monologue format where I'll be sharing some of the thoughts I'm covering over on Substack. Whether you're listening on your commute, on a walk, or in between tasks, thanks for tuning in. Let's begin. So welcome back to Creating Cadence. In our last episode, I talked about what happens after we burn bright and why productivity is never really the problem, but rather how we define it might be. Today, I'm focusing on one detrimental aspect of pushing a productivity for growth agenda. I'm talking about the myth of more and why enough might be the most strategic decision that you make this year. I'll also touch on how I rebuild my own work-life rhythm after burnout by setting clearer boundaries between enough and more. Because here's what I've learned over the past 10 years since that epic burnout experience. In a culture obsessed with endless growth, defining enough can be the most powerful move that you make, not just for your productivity and well-being, but also for your profits and other business outcomes. So if you're ready, let's dive in. The tyranny of more. More is the promise we're sold over and over. More clients, more revenue, more reach, more followers, more impact. But here's the truth that I've learned the hard way. More isn't always better. Sometimes more is the problem. In both the startup world and the entrepreneurial space, more is often framed as the only acceptable direction. Growth, scale, 10x. If you're a tech founder, that looks like aggressive growth targets, constant product iteration, and back-to-back funding rounds. If you're a mission-led entrepreneur, it's launch after launch, social media output that never sleeps, and stretch goals that keep stretching. The underlying effect? Enough is never enough. We feel the pressure to do more, grow more, hire more, expand more. But from a productivity perspective, that isn't always the best answer. And that definitely isn't the most sustainable answer for the future of work that we find ourselves in. There are hidden costs to always reaching for more. Chasing more doesn't just cost time and energy, it also costs focus. It scatters our attention, divides our resources, and erodes the clarity that's essential for meaningful work and powerful outcomes. Worse, it can create a dangerous feedback loop. You achieve one more thing, then you instantly raise the bar and you start needing to achieve another and another. You operate in a reactive firefighting mode to keep going, like a hamster on the wheel. There's no pause, no reflection, no adaptation or integration. And what happens over time? Well, you no longer know what enough feels or looks like anymore. You just know that you have to keep going. And that's a recipe for burnout. Let's look at redefining enough. You may be uncomfortable defining what enough looks like. You may think setting this boundary is too limiting, that it will hold you back, that it will restrict you from activating potential. But enough isn't about stagnation, it's about strategy. Getting clear on what enough means leads you to better results, because your business model sustains your needs and values. Your work output matches your capacity and creativity. You have more margin, more room for recovery, for deep thinking, for life outside of work. All the parts we don't really speak about, but which actually support our work outputs the most. When you deliberately define what enough means for you, you create a shield that protects you from scope creep, overgiving, and ultimately burnout. So here's why this matters. Enough gives you permission to say no to work that doesn't align. It enables you to build in rest cycles without guilt. It allows you to invest time and energy in fewer things, but in more depth, instead of being stretched by a surface volume of busyness. In a culture that worships excess, enough is a power move. But let's look at what implementing enough might mean for your company. Let's say you're a SaaS founder running a lean and profitable software business, but the pressure from potential investors is focused around growing faster, raising more, hiring fast to be bigger. What if, instead of succumbing to that pressure, You optimized your business and team for stability, agility, creative outcomes, and workplace satisfaction, making those your intentional growth KPIs for 12 months. Just what might the results be? Higher retention of loyal employees, fewer operational fires to have to put out, improved outputs to celebrate, a happier, more present founder and team, both at work and in the rest of their lives. This can often be kick-started by implementing more flexible working opportunities, whether that's something like 4-day working principles, hybrid or remote options, or rules around no meetings on Fridays or no contact after hours. There are plenty of examples out there of purpose-driven founders implementing more intentional, sustainable productivity strategies and getting these types of tangible, beneficial results, which in turn lead to more profitable, future-proof businesses. So think about it. Entrepreneurs take calculated risks all the time to achieve the outcomes that matter to them. Are you willing to take a risk by defining enough and using that shield to protect and help you achieve what matters most? Put another way, what would you do if your life, your health, and your business depended on implementing rules around enough? Go on, I dare you to think differently about this. Defining enough can help you move from impending collapse to cadence. So let me share a bit more about my own story by way of example. For years, I lived like a sprinter in a marathon. Every day was a push for the next deadline, the next event, the next launch or metric, you name it, insert it here. I was the multitasking spreadsheet queen, the person everyone asked for help in getting shit done. The more I could do, the more I was given to do, and the more I took on. Because a busy, organized person is the person who gets things done quickly, right? I thrived on the dopamine of more until my body called time out. My burnout didn't arrive as a single breaking point. It was the slow accumulation of overwork, under-rest, too much stress for too long, and the quiet erosion of joy. When I was finally forced to stop by a depleted body, a mind racked with anxiety and depression, and numerous health complaints, I didn't just need to recover. I needed to rethink my entire approach to how I lived and worked. I had to rewire my brain and redesign my life. And I discovered that balance wasn't the answer. At first I thought I needed more work-life balance, but balance, as we've talked about in the last episode, is a brittle, static concept. Life doesn't stand still, and neither does work, so attempting to balance doesn't work. What I needed was something more adaptable. And that's how I found Cadence, a rhythm that shifts with my seasons, projects, and capacity. A pace that adapts with inbuilt elasticity that prevents me from snapping when stretched. There were 3 particular elements that changed everything for me. When I rebuilt using the idea of creating cadence as my foundation, I focused on 3 core practices: creating space, place, and momentum. Creating space was about physically and mentally decluttering, stepping away from digital noise and giving myself room to think, live, and breathe more deeply. Creating place is about designing work and digital environments to support well-being first, productivity second. Because when we prioritize productivity first, well-being often suffers, but when we flip that script, both well-being and productivity thrive. Creating momentum is about moving forward in small, steady steps and calculated sprints, instead of endless, reactive, firefighting marathons. So these became the cornerstones for the foundations that make up my Cadence framework. The framework is adaptable and elastic because we all have and need our own rhythm. You have inbuilt natural hourly, daily, weekly, and monthly rhythms. These cycles are not always in fast-forward mode. They fluctuate. They are constantly adapting, adjusting, and recalibrating, and sometimes they need to pause. Your rhythm is unique to you. It's influenced by not just your energy capacity, but also by your values, your personal priorities, and the nature of your work. But when we try to always be on, in go, go, go mode, then our work cycles fall out of alignment with these natural rhythms. If there's no opportunity to adjust, then we can't keep up over the long haul. When we can't or don't adapt our pace to gear up and down between fast and slow, reactive and responsive, race and recharge, we burn out. Whether you're leading a startup team or running a creative business, your ability to create an adaptable pace determines your own longevity and that of your business. Too fast and you risk burning out, burning through yourself, your people, and even your money. Too slow? You risk stagnation and losing alignment with your goals. Malaise can have the same physiological effects as burnout. So it's about developing the skills to recalibrate to changing needs so that you don't get stuck in either of these lanes. If you want to find your rhythm, you can start by doing 3 things. The first is tracking your natural energy peaks and dips for a few weeks. How can your workflow match your cycles? The second is auditing your calendar for what drains you versus what fuels you. How can you change when you do meetings or deep work so that you are at your most energized when it matters most? The third is identifying one small change you can make to create space, even if it's only 30 minutes a day, and then doing it. Now you may be saying, I'm too busy for this, I have no time for this, but the amount of time you have is no different from any high-performance athlete or CEO. And yes, you can sacrifice 30 minutes doom scrolling Instagram, shopping mindlessly on Amazon Marketplace, or faffing about on ChatGPT to instead support your future self and your future outcomes. Break the habits so that you can change the cycle and your rhythm. There's a lot more to creating cadence than just these 3 simple steps, but they're a good place to start. So a quick recap about what this all means. In a world that constantly tells us we need more, defining enough is both an act of rebellion and a future-proofing strategy. It protects your focus, your energy, and your capacity to do work that actually matters. And when you pair that boundary with your own unique rhythm, when you design your work around your natural cycles rather than against them, you create something powerful. You create regenerative working practices and a more sustainable business. This boundary of enough isn't one that feels like deprivation or limitation, but instead it's the kind that gives rise to freedom and alignment. The kind that lets you build meaningful things without burning yourself out in the process. Remember, you're not lazy for needing rest. You're not unfocused for craving depth. You're not selfish for wanting to reclaim your time. You're strategic, and your rhythm is your greatest competitive advantage. In the next episode, I'll be zooming out to talk about systems, why you're not broken, but the system you're operating in might be. Until then, I invite you to think about what enough means for you, and to start paying attention to your own natural rhythms. You might be surprised by what you discover. So thanks for listening. I'll be back soon with the next episode in the series, but a few quick notes before you go. If you found this episode helpful, please like or rate the podcast wherever you listen to it. It helps others to find us. For deeper dives into building a more conscious business, subscribe to my Substack at creatingcadence.substack.com. You'll find more about my work at creatingcadence.co, and you can grab a copy of my book via thecadenceeffect.com. The Creating Cadence podcast is produced by Bondesio Media and is available on Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube. It's edited on Descript, and this season's music is from Changing Their Minds on Premium Beat. So until next time, keep moving forwards with courage, curiosity, and cadence. Bye for now.